mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about Season 2, Episode 8, the season finale of HBO's Euphoria, entitled, and I'm going to have to read this long-ass title, look off to the side to read it, All My Life, My Heart Has Yearned for a Thing I Cannot Name. So, this episode, the final episode of what has been a great season of Euphoria, ends in spectacular fashion. There's a lot of stuff to kind of go over, so I'm going to just dive right into it. But I want to say that I can already tell you right now, this season is going to make my best of 2022 list. It feels like the second half of this season was one where they just wanted to prove that this isn't a show that's all about graphic sex, graphic drug use. They go for the emotional moments. It's like the first half of the season, you saw, we were keeping track of the dicks, like how many they were putting in each episode. We were, talking about, again, they had these graphic sex scenes, kind of like what you were used to with Euphoria, but that some people kind of like use as a criticism. The show indulges in these overly gratuitous scenes, and it just feels like they're just pushing the envelope just for the sake of doing it. They completely abandoned that in the second half. You notice I even stopped talking about dick count because there hasn't been any dicks in the whole second half of this season. And they've gone for these big moments, these exciting moments. Episode 5, one of the greatest episodes of television I've ever seen. And just from then on, just going for like really good emotional moments, but also like really heavy like artistic stuff too. And this second half of the season knocked it out of the park. So I want to start by kind of going through each of the big characters' scenes within this episode. What happened with each of these characters in these big moments. And I want to kind of work toward talking about Rue at the end. So I'm going to start with talking about Nate. So Nate in this episode, I think we feel like Nate's gone like fully good guy, maybe. I don't know how his situation with Cassie and Maddie is going to play out. So I think there's still something there to be explored as far as like whether or not Nate is making a face turn here. But, last week he gave Jules, was that last week or 2 weeks ago, whatever. But he gave Jules the video. I think that was actually 2 episodes ago. Gave Jules the video just seemingly out of the kindness of his heart. And then this week he finds Cal at one of his construction sites, hanging out with a bunch of half-naked people. And he essentially has snitched. Like, he's turning his father in. He called the cops. He holds him there at gunpoint. And he has this flash drive, which he says has quote-unquote everything on it. And he's given his father up. And that's that. And he squarely says it's revenge. But we also learn a couple of things. Because, I've been asking in the past couple videos, that scene where his mother alluded to something happening to him when he was a kid. And I felt like the show kind of played around with the idea that maybe Cal might have molested Nate. They had the dream sequence last week where you literally see that happening. And we find out that, just like some of you said in the comments, that it was simply, I was looking too deeply into it. It was simply him discovering the videos of his father. But we get the confirmation of that. He discovered the videos of his father. I think he said he was 11. And what was the other thing? Oh, and that the molestation things were dreams that he would have after he had seen those videos. So, they kind of explore how Cal traumatized Nate. Cal's, regret over how poorly he raised his kids. We still don't know anything about that mysterious third kid in that family photo, but I still think, I'm going to just go into this right now very briefly. This episode feels like it could be the end of the series. They wrapped up a lot of stuff here, whereas if you never get another episode of Euphoria, you don't have to go like, but I didn't really find out about this really important thing. So, like, they wrapped up a lot of stuff, but they also left the door open to explore some interesting storylines in the future, and I think that's one of them. You can explore whether or not Nate's gonna what's gonna happen between Nate, Cassie, and Maddie. You still have potentially something with Maddie and Minka Kelly's character, which didn't pan out into being anything like I thought it was going to be. And then you have what could potentially have happened to this mysterious third kid. So there's things that they can explore from the Nate angle in season 3. But this episode did a really good job of balancing leaving open potential storylines for a third season, but closing enough chapters to where if you don't get any more of this show, you can be satisfied with what you got. So, interesting end to Nate's storyline for this season. Nate's storyline was okay. It had its moments, it had its ups, it had its downs. Cal's moments really were over the top, but I think they wrapped that up fairly well. Like, if I don't get anything else about Nate or Cassie or Maddie or anything like that, I'm satisfied with that. So speaking of Cassie, we do get her spectacular entrance into the play. I love how they open up her segment of the show with her still, just like the last episode ended with her breathing on the glass. And her mother looks back and makes this face like, oh shit, like I see the way this motherfucker breathing. This is gonna be a problem. And Cassie does. She strolls down there and hops up on stage and has a complete fit spectacularly, like you would expect. I will say, though, this was one of the lesser interesting moments of this episode to me. Like Cassie blowing up was not what I thought, just because I don't know what kind of felt empty for me, but it felt less like, I guess, someone having a spectacular moment that I'm going to take away, like, wow, that was a great scene. It was just someone having a spectacular moment within the context of that episode. Like, it didn't feel like a great scene to me, if that makes sense. But Cassie does blow up, but a couple of good, interesting things come out of this scene. For one, Cassie says to Lexi, in general, I'm going to kind of like summarize it a little bit, but she basically says, like, Lexi's been an observer her whole life instead of a participant. Like, that's why you're so pissy, because you don't participate in life. You're just an observer, which is actually, if you think about it, a really cruel insult. But eventually Maddie works her way down to the stage. She decides that Cassie just needs her ass beat. And they fight, they slug it out, and it ends with what looked like Maddie kind of like running Cassie's head into a wall. And then later we see them talking in the bathroom. And I'm confused kind of coming away from this scene, because I can't tell if this exchange is them kind of like, I won't say bearing the hatchet, but looking at it like, okay, well, we fought, that's it, we're done here. Or if this was like a threat almost from Maddie. But she says something to the effect of like, well, for starters, Cassie says, Nate broke up with me before I even came in there. And Maddie says something to the effect of like, don't worry, this is just the beginning, or something to that effect. And I couldn't tell if that was her way of saying this is just the beginning of all of your back and forth ridiculous whatever you're going to have with Nate. Like, you feel like this is the end, that he broke up with you, but this is just the beginning. It's going to go crazy. Or if it was like, this is just the beginning of me fucking you up and us having problems. Like, don't worry about Nate. This is just the beginning of all the shit that we about to be going through, the three of us. I don't know how to take that, but it felt to me kind of like we just got done fighting and we're good here. And her saying, almost kind of like trying to console Cassie, like, okay, you're gonna be dealing with a lot of this kind of shit with Nate, so just prepare yourself. And that's kind of what it felt like to me. But I know you guys can let me know what you thought. One thought that I had at this point, because this was an ongoing discussion in this moment, was how to handle this part of the play, because the play is obviously based on real life events. So they have a discussion on whether or not they should essentially pretend that Cassie's blow up moment was actually part of the play. And I was a very big proponent of doing that, because I looked at that as like, either way, Lexi comes out of this a legend. She either says that this is part of the play, and now for the whole rest of time, nobody believes that it was part of the play, and it's a whole conversation on whether or not this was real, whether or not this was staged, and it just kind of like goes on in history. Like, it's either that or she's brilliant. Like, people look at it like, wow, that was staged. Like, what a genius Lexi is. Either way, she comes out a legend. So I feel like you kind of got to do that. Like, lean into it and just go, yeah, that was part of the play, and then leave people to wonder and debate and be engaged about it, or leave people to think that you're fucking brilliant. Either way, you win. But for some reason, Lexi decides not to do that, and she's honest about what happens, and then they take like an intermission, and they come back later for a final act, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. But before I get to, I guess, like the Rue portion of my conversation here, no, it's not a conversation, it's just me talking to y'all. But before I get to the Rue part, we got to talk about Fez, and through that lens, also Lexi. So we've been seeing this relationship kind of blossom over the course of this entire season. I think we're all in agreement that this is an absolutely fucking adorable relationship these two have. I loved how at the beginning we start with Fez and things are terrible. He's about it again. This picks up right where we left off last week. Fez is about to walk out the door. This Custer guy goes, "Yeah, the police found Mouse body," and Faye finally makes herself fucking useful. She drops this glass, which I believe that was unintentional, but while she's picking it up, she basically warns Fez, like, don't say shit. And then when she gets up, she kind of covers for him, saying, like, you told me that you thought Lori was going to kill, Lori's the one who killed Mouse, you know, all this kind of shit, which would be a good direction to send the police, right? Because, I mean, like, Lori was, I would have been Mouse's, I guess, the person that he, I don't want to say reports to, but like, you know, his boss. I don't know. one rung up the chain from Mouse, so it could be conceivable that his boss could kill him for whatever reason. But Ash isn't buying it. Stabs dude in the neck, and in what was one of the first of many sick scenes in this whole situation, you see Fez covering his mouth and choking him because you can't let any of this sound get out because he knows he's recording on the phone. So it has to be quiet to buy themselves time. Like if the murder gets picked up on the phone, the police are going to be there way sooner than they would have been otherwise. When Fez does, if Fez hadn't done the choke, and then once Custer dies, he dropped the phone and some pop or whatever. Like that bought them time. Had Fez not done that, the police would have been in there way sooner. So that was a pretty cool scene to watch. But that's how they start the episode. But then they cut to Fez and Lexi's phone conversations. It's like a whole little montage of phone conversations that they've had. And this scene is, again, fucking adorable. Like, there's a moment where Fez is like, oh, yeah, he mentioned something from Little House on the Prairie. He's like, oh, you never seen Little House on the Prairie? Granted, like, what is Fez, a drug dealer, doing with his life that he's watched Little House on the Prairie when he's probably half my age, and I ain't even fucking seen Little House on the Prairie, and now he's shocked that someone else who looks like she's probably about 15 years old, 14 years old, 16, whatever age Lexi might be, that she hasn't seen Little House on the Prairie. And then in the next scene of the montage, she's watching Little House. I'm like, oh, that's so adorable. Like, he mentions he likes the show, and then you just start watching it. And so they have conversations, over the course of, I don't know how long, but you could tell these are several conversations over the course of a significant amount of time. And there's a nice moment, I think, where Fez is kind of like railing on social media, which I think people who shit talk social media are kind of corny. There's not something I'm going to get into right now, but if you ever want to know why I think that, go ahead and ask. Maybe I'll reply in a comment. But Fez says that he doesn't like social media because he doesn't like how it takes away the mystery. And he wants to learn about people in real time, in person with them in these moments, rather than having social media where you can read and learn about everybody in advance of even meeting them. And I thought, what an interesting take. Like, Fez is such an interesting dude. Like, I don't know. I just thought that was a really dope moment in that conversation. So that was really cool. So picking back up later in the episode when we return here, Fez has essentially decided that he's going to take the fall, which is bad enough. It's sad enough, actually, to just that alone. Because this is a guy who was literally like 10 seconds away from being completely removed from this situation. And after we'd seen all this cute stuff between him and Lexi over the course of the season, he's 10 seconds away from his little pressed shirt. He's got his flowers, his little, like he really did himself up to impress this girl. Got his little seat at the play. Like, this is just 10 out of 10 on the adorable scale, especially when you're talking about a drug dealer. 10 seconds away, and now he's in a position where he is telling Ash, don't say shit, I'm taking the fall for this. He's gonna get life. Like I don't see the way, because it's not just murder, there's all the drugs. Like, he's done. He's gonna take the fall for the murder of Mouse. He'd have to also take the fall for the murder of Custer. Like, that's it for Fez. He's voluntarily ending anything that he might have possibly had with Lexi. And it's already sad enough at that point. But Ash refuses to listen, takes all the guns, tosses him in the bathtub, throws himself in the bathtub, locks the bathroom door, and he plans on shooting it out with the police. And, he gets a split moment where Fez looks, I think they hear like a sound on one of the locks or something like that. and he takes that moment to hit Fez with the butt of a gun, closes the door. Police come in. I think there's like one of them like flash grenades or something, and I guess Ash hears this and maybe thinks it's like a gunshot or something, and he just starts shooting. And man, what an exhilarating scene. One, the fact that Fez got hit in the stomach is a very bad sign. But you're not like, I'm not even concerned if we get a season 3 on whether or not Fez is alive. Like, you're not gonna kill Fez. I don't think you kill Fez on this show, period. That's too big of a loss, I think, for the show to take. You can't kill off the second best and most interesting character. But you also don't kill off that character off screen. So, like, it loses its weight if, say, we have another 2 years in between seasons. We come back for season 3, and then they want to build on that emotional weight that we had at the end of this episode by trying to pick back up however many years later for us, literally, say, a year or two later, trying to pick back up, oh, Fez is in the hospital, and then Fez dies. It's going to be, like, way less emotionally impactful if they did it that way or if they did it off screen. So I'm not really concerned for Fez. But in that moment, he's hit, he's bleeding, he's screaming. It's just a kid in there. Stop shooting. It's telling Ash to stop. It's bullets flying everywhere. Doors, walls shot up. Insane scene. Incredibly shot. It's you feel like you're there. It's scary. You have no idea what's gonna happen. It's madness. What a great scene this is. Eventually, Ash stops responding. A police officer goes in, and Ash is faking it, shoots that guy. And then we see the laser sight move up Ash's body, and we hear the shot, so we know what happened with Ash. I believe Fez might have actually even seen that, like the way he was positioned, the way he was looking. He might have seen it, or he might have just heard it. But I don't think that they could have shot Ash from outside. Like, if they have a visual on Ash from outside of the bathroom, then Fez should have that same visual. So I believe Fez actually saw this happen too, which makes it even worse. Oh man, what a moment that was. So I'm gonna reach for my mouse here because I have so many notes. I gotta scroll. Normally I don't have to scroll, but let's see, what else did I have here? Yeah, so I only had the same thing about we don't know about Fez, but I think Fez is probably alive. So lastly, I want to move on to talking about Rue. And Rue's, I guess, function throughout this episode was she was essentially on an apology tour. She wanted to make amends to all of the people that she had hurt over the course of this season and over the course of her life, I'm sure, since her father passed. You know, we had the scene, whenever that was, where she apologized to Ali. And now we see her kind of making the rounds and apologizing to the people that she wronged over the course of particularly over the course of the last couple episodes for us. And we start off with Elliot. She mentions at the play, we see her and Elliot exchange glances at the play. Already we're kind of like, okay, well, we know where we last left them, so this is a little awkward, but they lock eyes and they're like, okay, that's weird. But now we hear Rue narrate that she actually had visited Elliot a couple of days prior, and we see this scene. And Rue goes to Elliot's place, and she goes to not apologize, but to forgive him for what he did. And she gives a great line. It says something like, you know, I've got a lot of I'm sorry's, but not a lot of I forgive you's. Something to that effect. A really great line. Really great scene. And Elliot starts to, you know, he says, let me play something for you. He starts to play a song. And immediately my eyes kind of roll back in my head. Like, I don't want to hear this fucking song, man. But what a beautiful scene this is. Like, I don't know how anybody else felt about the song itself or whatever. But this song and him singing it, you know, like, I wrote this song, he's singing it to her. Like, that alone is going to be a little bit moving to have, like, a regular fucking guy who's, like, a drug dealer who you've just gotten high with, and he just wrote this song for you, and he's just playing it. Already, that's going to be something that's going to resonate with you. But then the lyrics of the song, as I start to listen to them, are essentially him apologizing for what he did, but also justifying it. Like, I did this because I love you. I hope you don't hold it against me. I hope we can be good. I'm sorry, but I did this because I wanted to help you. Like, and it's such a sad song, but it's a beautiful song at the same time. And they do a great job with really long, lingering shots on both of their faces. Him singing, her crying. Like, it allows us to, like, really feel the weight of that moment. Like, because I feel like if you cut back and forth quickly or something like that, it doesn't feel the same. But they'd have these really tight shots on Elliot's face, on Rue's face, and you see them, they're almost uncomfortably long, and you can just kind of see them working through that emotion, the emotion for him singing the song, the emotion for her hearing it. And it's an incredibly beautiful scene. I'm totally in on this scene by the end of it. By the beginning, I'm rolling my eyes. At the end of it, I'm like, what a great fucking scene this is. And it's funny. It ends and he finishes the song and he says something like, "But I'm still working on it." Like I instantly laugh. Like this is one of the most beautiful moments I've ever seen. And he's just like, "Yeah, but I'm still working on it." And she's like, I think she said something like, "I think I like it," or something like that. But what a great moment that was. I absolutely love that scene. That actor, what was his name? Dominic something? I can't recall, but I think he actually sings. Well, obviously he actually sings, but yeah, it was a great song. I think listening to the words of it and not just the meaning behind it, but like actually the words he was using, it was a really beautiful song. So I thought that was a great moment in this episode as well. So Rue moves on from there, and we see her with Lexi. And before I even move to that, now that we've seen the song, it gives different context to their exchange glances at the play, which I thought was really cool. Because you see it at first, you're just like, oh, that's awkward. But then you see it after the song, you're like, wow, like that's a lot heavier of a glance now, considering the song that was sung to her a couple of days ago. So I thought that was pretty cool. So Rue moves on to Lexi, and she calls up Lexi and says, like, can I come over? She goes over, and they kind of like, share, I don't want to say share stories because that makes it sound like it's a positive thing, but, they kind of talk back and forth about how shitty their dads were. Not how shitty their dads were, about losing their dads in different ways. And Rue has a good moment where she, I believe, is speaking for Lexi's father, but from her experience as an addict, because we know that Lexi's father was a drunk. We know that Rue is, addicted to any number of things. And she says something like, I think, it might be, weird for me to speak for him, but I believe he loved you more than he loved himself. And that's her speaking from her own experience. Like, as an addict, I know we love the people around us more than we love ourselves. And we can't see through our own pity for ourselves, our own sadness, our own depression, to how we're affecting other people in the pursuit of these drugs that are quote unquote helping us with all of these feelings that we're experiencing that we don't know how to handle. And I thought that was a nice moment for Rue to try to help Lexi feel better about her own father. Kind of like, I'm saying something to you that maybe he could have never said, he could have never articulated it even, but as an addict, I can tell you this is how we feel about those around us, even though it probably doesn't feel that way to you. And I thought that was a really nice moment for her and Lexi, and a really good, I think, if you're Lexi and you have all these issues about your father and his absence and things like that, that can give you something of some closure, I think, on your relationship with your father. You can look at it like, well, maybe he really felt, he really loved me or whatever, despite pretty clear evidence that he didn't. But it looks like, but you gotta think through the mind of an addict. So to have an addict there to tell you what he was likely thinking, I think that probably gave Lexi some closure, and I thought that was a nice scene. Here's where it gets a little weird though. The play ends with that scene. And there's other moments where, and we've talked about this, where there's some artistic license kind of being used by the show as it pertains to the play. Like moments where like scenes will bleed into one another, like the real life will bleed into the play. Scenes where like, how would Lexi have been there for this? Like the scene right before Cassie decides to finally go off, where her character's on the carousel. Like Lexi wouldn't have even known that. So like there's some artistic license being used here, and I think that's what it is. I don't think that this was some boneheaded thing by the writers where they didn't realize, hey, there's no way that something that happened after the play could be in the play. I don't think that's a mistake. I think that's something they're doing they're exercising their artistic license here and doing it willfully and not trying to hide it. Like, this is just something that we wanted to do because we think it's cool. And a lot of this shit that we've seen during this play and throughout these final 2 episodes doesn't really track completely at all times. And I'm okay with that. I don't know if any of you were like pissed off about that. I don't know how many people even caught it, but I paused it up to my wife. I'm like, she's like, no, I'm thinking the same thing. So I don't know if people were caught that and were displeased, but I'm okay with that simply because I truly believe this was not a mistake. This was them just kind of saying like, this is how we want to end this. And even though this might not make sense logistically, a lot of what we've done here doesn't make sense logistically. We just want to make it so that this ends in a beautiful way where we kind of transition into this nice moment ending this play. And it doesn't matter if it could have happened or not. And I'm okay with that when I feel like it's intentional and it's just them being creative and using some artistic license. So if you didn't catch that, sorry I brought it to your attention. If you did and you didn't like it, let me know why. We could talk about it, but I was okay with it. And I was okay with everything else I've seen that didn't quite track either. Because again, the play, looking at it as a viewer, the play never felt real. In the sense of like, this is exactly how, like, it felt like extravagant. Like the whole, like everybody was saying after the last episode, like, what kind of budget does this school have? Don't even look at it that way. Like, I did it first, but I'm still kind of like, that's kind of a clue that they're playing fast and loose with the logistical aspects of this play. And I don't think we're meant to believe, like, in a literal sense, like, they have a play with like a rotating stage at this, and they might, but I mean, like, you know, I think they wanted this play to look a certain way, and they didn't care if that way was something that would make people go, is this feasible for a high school? Like, I don't think that was a concern. I think they wanted to make it look beautiful, and they succeeded. They wanted to have these big emotional moments, and they succeeded. And they played fast and loose with the timelines and the logic, but I think that was on purpose. And I'm pretty confident in that, so I'm okay with it. And then lastly, we see Rue and Jules talk. Jules heads over, sits next to Rue, again apologizes, again tells her he loves her, tells her he loves her, tells her she loves her, and then Rue doesn't say anything. She kisses her on the forehead as she leaves. And as Rue's leaving, she mentions about Jules being her first love. And she said something like, at least I think so. I was high the whole time. She said she was sober for the rest of the year. And I think we're meant to take away from that Rue is trying to move past Jules. You know, Elliot mentioned after his song, he said, you know, can we still be friends? She's like, you the one said that we're not good for each other. And he's like, I still believe that. So she's kind of drawing the line, like, you know, like I'm going to stay sober line, and I'm going to keep the people who push me to drugs away from me. And I think that was what happened with Elliot. It's like, yeah, it'd be nice if we could be friends, but you're the kind of guy that's going to push me toward drugs, so bye. And I think that's kind of what happened with Jules. Like, she's like, Jules is my first love, you know, Jules is everything, whatever. But at the end of the day, Jules is someone who pushed her to use. And when I say pushed her to use, I don't mean like pressured her, but I mean like someone who's not even necessarily her existence, but like just them together and this person existing in her circle, it just ends up in situations that make her use, whether that's them doing drugs together, whether that's Jules saying or doing something that upsets Rue that caused her to do drugs, whatever the case may be. She looks at it as like, when I'm with Jules, I'm doing drugs, so this isn't going to work out. And I think that's what we're meant to take away from it, is that this is her moving past Jules. I don't know if that's the case, but again, if it is, that's something that we can leave open for season 3 as well. So a couple of more thoughts before I wrap this up real quick. I already mentioned I love Rue's line about a lot of sorries and not a lot of forgive yous. The girl who opened the pop can when Nate and Cal were like talking about sex videos and molestation, and you just hear, I thought that was hilarious. I don't know who thought to put that in, or if that person did that and they just kept it in the show, but that was so weird that it was really funny. And I like when Rue, and this is how I'm going to close, when Rue is reading her eulogy at her father's funeral, and which every time we see the portions of this moment, it's ridiculously sad, but she's talking about like those moments of what that felt like. You know, she's like, I was in the hallway when it happened. These are the moments that change a person or to scar you for life, something to that effect. And she says something like she remembers them saying like, lift him on 3. Like, though that I think made that scene so good, because when you think about those sorts of things, even as a viewer of a television show, you think about the big moments, like discovering the person died or something like that. But remembering those little things really personalizes it and humanizes it. The idea of hearing lift him on 3. Like that that's the kind of thing that makes, I think, the writing on this show so good, is because that's the kind of thing that when you're traumatized like that, you remember the little things. And that's what made it feel real. Like, give you guys an example. My uncle, I have many aunts and uncles but when one of them died, I was like kind of closed off from it. You know, I wasn't particularly close to him, but we had a couple of moments here or there. And at his funeral, I was standing, you know, near the casket, and I was fine. And I just remember after everything was over, it was an open casket. They closed the casket, and that closing of the casket, the finalization of him no longer being here, that's what broke me. And that's when I started crying at this funeral, and I was almost confused because I'm like, I never felt the urge to cry prior to that moment, but it was that symbolism of the finalizing of this is it. We're closing the door on this man's life. That was what did it for me. And so, like, you remember when you experience something like that, you remember those little things. And I thought that Let's Lift Him on 3 was the perfect example of the kind of thing that sticks with you when you experience something traumatic like that. So I think that's a great way to end this video. This episode was a great way to end this season. This season was incredible. Episode 5 was fucking incredible. This is going to be in my top shows of 2022. I don't know where, but it'll be there. And it's great to have something like this. You know, tomorrow's March 1st, and I already got something that is going to be in my top 10. I got 2 things. A Peacemaker is going to be in there as well. So I will see you guys for season 3 if it happens. If not, please stay subscribed. If you're somebody new, subscribe now. Hang around. I do this kind of analysis for everything I cover. So if you fuck with this video, you're going to fuck with all of them. So until then, peace.